Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Jessica Flynn and I am the owner and maker of Flynn Sisters Boutique. And today I'm going to show you how I use those really cool Arteza alcohol markers to intensify the colors on my waterslide images. You guys had an overwhelming response about my ask on whether or not you guys wanted to see this in my last Arteza alcohol marker video. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this tutorial. We're going to show you how to use it on a beautiful floral pattern around a basic glitter tumbler. So I really love how this looks. I love the simplicity and the elegance of this, and I hope you do too. So that's enough chit chat for me. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, you guys, so as usual, we're starting with a fully prepped and sanded cup that I've base painted white with a flat white spray paint. I'm using a 30-ounce skinny mug from Craft Haven for this project. And if you guys are having a hard time spreading your epoxy onto the cup to apply your glitter, I would recommend putting it in front of a space heater just for a short period of time, enough to get the cup warm, and that will ensure that the epoxy spreads on like butter so that you use very little epoxy. Usually what I'll do is mix a 5 milliliter amount of epoxy and use less than 1 milliliter of that little pot, okay? So you want to use a very tiny amount. And we're going to spread this evenly on the cup and make sure that we have no lines. For the handle, I pay special attention to make sure that I got over, under, around, and through. And I just really take your time with this step. I would also recommend going slightly heavier with the epoxy around your handle because we want the glitter to lay flat on the handle, whereas the sides of the cup, we want to see texture in the glitter to get a lot of sparkle. So the reason we want the glitter to lay a little more flat on our handle is so that it's easier to epoxy later. And if you've ever glittered and epoxied one of these handled cups, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm ready to apply my glitter. I'm using Silk from Peachy Olive Glitters. This is a beautiful iridescent white glitter. It has so much sparkle, and for this like kind of floral design, I wanted a white glitter that flashed more pink for kind of a softer, more feminine look. But you really could use any kind of white glitter for this project. Doesn't matter. It's gonna look great with whatever white glitter you choose. And I'm going really lightly around that handle. You don't really want to let it rip around that handle because, again, we do want that glitter on the handle to lay kind of flat. I am going to use a small piece of parchment paper to kind of push down some of those pieces that might be sticking up around the edge of the handle. From there, it's just a matter of making sure that we've got full coverage all around our cup with our glitter. So I'm just going to sprinkle it generously all over our cup. Really let it rip because we're only using one color. Doesn't really matter about technique or placement. So once we've got everything evenly coated and it looks beautiful, I'm going to let this sit on my rack to dry upside down for 2 to 3 hours. Then I'm going to tap off my excess glitter and put my first layer of epoxy on. So my first layer of epoxy for this cup was about 45 milliliters of epoxy. Again, this is a 30-ounce skinny mug from Craft Haven. And when I epoxy these handles, I keep my turner off, and I'm paying really careful attention to my coverage around and on the handle. Want to make sure we get completely over, under, around, and through, but we also want to be very conservative on the coverage because we don't want pooling of epoxy at the connections on the handle where the handle meets the cup. Sometimes that epoxy tends to pool up around there. So I'm just going to apply my epoxy how I normally would to the remainder of my cup. And once I've got everything applied, I'm going to hit it really quick with my torch, and we're going to let this dry for 4 to 6 hours. After that 4 to 6 hour period, I go straight into a second coat. You don't have to clean your cup in between that first and second coat. You don't want to touch it. You don't want to sand it. Just go directly into a second coat. The second coat on this particular cup was about 20 milliliters of epoxy. After the second coat, I let that dry for 8 to 12 hours before I do any kind of necessary sanding on the cup. And I'm not really going to go too far into depth about how I sand my cups just because I've already covered it a lot in some videos. I'll link some down below if that's something that you're struggling with. Mainly, I just sand the top rim down to expose a thin line of stainless steel, which is what our final coats of epoxy will adhere to create a seal for the cup. Around the handle, I sand really lightly and with a lot of caution with a finer grit because it's super easy to sand down through the glitter on those handles. If you find yourself feeling a lot of glitter around that handle, you might want to wait until the third coat to start sanding your handle. And then of course I make sure that my bottom rim is totally smooth as well, and I knock down any pokey bits of glitter around the sides of the cup. And then once I have everything sanded nicely, I take it to the sink, I rinse it off, I dry it with some coffee filters. And for this particular cup, you want to make sure that we make it glossy again with Rust-Oleum 2x clear gloss spray paint. If you want to just do another coat of epoxy for this step instead before we apply the water slide, you can. It's really important that you don't apply clear water slide to a flat or sanded surface because you will see that texture come through the water slide. You want to make sure that you're applying clear water slide to a really glossy surface. Next, we're going to prepare our water slide. I'm using Kodiak brand water slide. I've already printed it using my Canon Pixma MX922 inkjet printer, and we're going to seal it 4 times using Rust-Oleum 2x clear gloss spray. You want to let each coat dry before you add the next, and I use a small space heater to help speed that process up. It's really important that you do really nice, thin, even coats and that you shake your spray paint really, really well before you spray it onto your water slide. After all that clear spray paint has dried, I cut out my image just using a pair of scissors, and I cut the least amount of detail possible. So the more basic of a shape that we cut this, the easier it will be to transfer. I'm using room temp water, and I'm going to get my cup wet with my fingers a little bit, so I'll have a little bit more movement with my water slide. When I go to transfer it, I just loosen it off the page a little bit. Again, this was in the water for about 5 minutes. You want to make sure that it's completely separated from the paper before you attempt to transfer it. And leaving the paper backing on for as long as possible, I'm just going to slowly smooth this out with my fingertips. And once I have the whole image transferred onto my cup, I'm going to smooth it out using damp paper towels. Once I've got most of the wrinkles and the bubbles out with the damp paper towels, I'll move in with some dry paper towels to kind of speeden up the process and get everything dry and on there really nicely. Okay, and once we've got that water slide applied, you want to let that dry for at least 2 hours. Preferably, we'd let it dry overnight. You really want to make sure that that water slide is totally dry and fully adhered to the cup before we move on to this process with the alcohol markers. And this is such a fun process, and I think it was so relaxing. Really, you're just going to take the markers and color right over the water slide. We do not have to put on another coat of epoxy before we do this. You don't have to put on additional sealer before you do this. You can just color right over that epoxy because it's already been sealed with that clear gloss spray paint. So I'm just going to carefully color in some of the colors to add some detail, really intensify these colors. I understand that I picked a water slide that already is pretty bold just because I'm obsessed with this image. I think these watercolor floral arrangements are so beautiful, and I love the boho look of this particular one with the flowers and the cranberry and the navy. Super pretty. But there were parts of the image that were kind of lost in, with the details once I put it over the glitter. So it was really nice to be able to really define those details in the image. And this is also really helpful for if you accidentally ripped your water slide just a little bit, or it got a little off color in the transfer process. You are able to correct that to a point with these markers. In the past, I used to use a really fine tip like paintbrush and use some like loose alcohol inks from the bottles to do this, but it was like really tedious and I never had the variety of color like I do with these. All right, so really you're just going around and picking the areas that you want to add some detail to and strengthen the color with. And that's pretty much it. I mean, it's super simple, very easy to do. It takes no skill because really you're just coloring in an image that's already there. And once we get done, we're gonna let this dry for about an hour, and then I'm going to spray seal it with a Mod Podge spray sealer. This is the matte clear acrylic sealer, and I really prefer this particular sealer when I'm sealing alcohol inks because it doesn't fade or change the colors like some acrylic sealers will. Just make sure that you shake your can really, really well and you do a nice, even, thin coat. And it only took one coat to seal these markers. Okay, once that spray sealer was dry, which only took about 20 minutes, I went into my final coats of epoxy, which for this cup took 2 final coats, and then we were totally done. So that's it for this tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys loved our video, make sure to give us a thumbs up. Tell me what you thought about this in the comments, and be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss a new video. I upload every Wednesday and Saturday. We'll see you soon. If you love this video, you could check out our last video here. Also be sure to find us on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, and of course subscribe for all our new videos that come out every Wednesday and Saturday. Thanks so much for watching. See you soon.